going on? Well, thanks for tuning in once again. Let's recap the Wardley versus Huni fight. What a fight, what a finish. Huni was that close of getting the win. There was no secret that he would have won the fight. As I mentioned in my breakdown, if the fight goes the distance, Huni wins. Huni's more experienced, better overall boxer. The only thing that Wardley had an advantage over Huni was the power, and that's exactly what got him to the finish line. He managed to land a punch that knocked him out. Now, a lot of people thought that the fight was over because Huni was so dominant, including myself. I know it's heavyweight boxing, but Huni had Wardley backed up throughout the whole fight. I wasn't expecting that. I thought that Wardley would be able to at least come forward. I mentioned that Wardley isn't really great on the back foot, and we saw that. He had no answers at all, and deep inside the pocket, he just couldn't let his hands go, could he? He was holding on a lot. At times he looked like he was troubled, like the body language didn't look too great. In the corner he was really quiet. Huni in the corner saying this guy's slow, after the first round. So he was very confident that he could outbox Wardley, and there was no surprise that he was going to do that. He's the better boxer. I mentioned that if it does go the distance, he wins. But, I wasn't going to count out Wardley just because of what I mentioned, that Huni does like to lean forward. So basically, leaning forward inside the pocket, that's an open shot on its own, And it only took one mistake from Huni. Just one mistake, and that was leaning forward inside the pocket, trying to come forward. And he's basically partially threw a jab, similar to what Wilder does at times. He partially throws a jab to blind an opponent, and then he comes with the right hand. And I never really saw much feints with the jab from Huni. He was very dominant with the jab at times, pushing Wardley away. On this occasion he feints him, partially throws it, I should say, and Wardley was turning majority of the fight when Huni was throwing that right hand. He was turning, and Huni was catching him every time on the ropes, but he was turning to his right. He was turning to his right, and Huni would catch him on the side of the face. On this occasion he goes to his left. Huni's throwing the jab partially, which allows Wardley to catch him, gives him just enough time to slip that punch, that right hand, and catch him while he's leaning forward. Nothing parked up on the left, the jab hands down, and he lands a punch that knocks down Huni, and ultimately, ends the fight. I was very disappointed with the counts, with the cameras especially. I thought that it was a bit suspect, not showing the fight after he got dropped. We never really saw how badly hurt Huni was. He did get to the counts of 9, and the referee didn't even ask if he was okay. But then again, we never saw what he was doing on the ground because the camera wasn't showing that, was it? Had he have gotten back up, continued, there's a possibility that he may have survived. But then again, at the end of the fight, Huni's not really saying I could have continued, so it's hard to gauge it. Very bad footage as it happened, but that's exactly how I predicted the fight, that Wardley will catch him with one shot and knock him out. Because, you know, Huni was really hungry to make a statement here. He wanted to finish Wardley, in my opinion. You know, he didn't need to, but he was really going for it. You know, he was throwing big punches, but mainly deep inside the pocket. On this occasion, you know, there was a bit of space because Wardley was going to the body, circling. That created the space, and Huni, you know, leaning forward inside the pocket as he steps in, misses. Wardley slips the punch, lands his right hand. Very unfortunate, but you know, it's a learning curve for him. You know, it's something that he can improve on. You know, he's very good at what he does. You know, as I mentioned, he's very good at what he does. Great boxer all rounded. The only thing that he lacks is a bit of power and just, you know, just a bad habit of leaning over the pocket. That's the only thing. But, you know, he definitely showed the public that he's, you know, he's definitely someone to watch out for in terms of boxing IQ and, you know, how he handles himself in the ring. And, you know, he's very skillful. So, I mean, overall, great performance from Huni. Wardley, you know, just got the right moment, you know, just timed him perfectly and got the right moment. From an error from Huni, you know, Wardley managed to get that one punch in, you know, and I mean, it was round 10, he only had another 2 more rounds after that. I had, you know, Huni up at least 4 to 5 rounds. You know, he was very dominant in this fight. So, I mean, great performance from Huni, unfortunate. But a learning curve, you know, just to be cautious against punches. It is the heavyweight division, you know, you've got to watch out for those there's one punches, you know, there's guys that can end it in one punch, knockout artists, you could say. You know, Wardley's coming in there very inexperienced, you know, only started at 22, and his whole game was to land that one punch, and he managed to do it, you know. So he's got to be careful with guys like that, you know, guys that can punch and end it with one hit. Great fight overall. I really enjoyed it. I was, like I said, I was surprised that Huni could, you know, be that front-footed against a puncher like Wardley, but it just shows the lack of experience that Wardley has, you know, on the back foot, especially deep inside the pocket. He just couldn't answer anything from Huni. That's my take anyway. I got my prediction right. I did predict round 8. Wardley got it in round 10. Let me know your take on it. Do you think that the ref made the right call? What did you think of the fight? Leave it in the comment section. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you next time. Peace.